Namaste. Welcome to our 91st Gita Talk. We'll be beginning in the 59th verse of the 18th chapter. Krishna has said all this tremendous amount of information to Arjuna, explaining why it is his duty to engage in the battle. And for us, of course, it's the battle for higher consciousness, or the battle against that which takes us away from higher consciousness. So Krishna says, if filled with egotism, you think, I will not fight. In other words, he's saying, yes, Arjuna, you think it's your higher nature, but it isn't your higher nature, which makes you shrink back from the battle, because the battle is your dharma. We won't go into the idea about what's the dharma about fighting and so on. Because again, think of it as a symbol. We theoretically, hopefully, are on the good side, and then there's all these things, many of which are with us, arranged on the wrong side, and they've got to go. And there are people that don't want to have to struggle with their inner forces. Many people are so egotistical they don't even want to acknowledge they had them. Which is why Krishna mentioned egotism. And therefore you say, all right, I'm not going to fight. I'm going to take it easy. I'm going to go with the flow. After all, we're all divine, aren't we? Why do you need all this? Well, why do you need to be a vegetarian? Why do you need to meditate? Fine, don't. But for those who are not fools, and who are not just human beings, but have recognized the reality of their own divine, immortal self, for them, these words are meant. If filled with egotism you think, I will not fight, this your resolve shall be in vain, for your nature will compel you. Now, there's two aspects of this. Sorry, very needful. In Arjuna's case, he was a Kshatriya. Fighting was his swadharma. It was part of his swabhava, his very self-nature. So chances are, if he had said, no, I'm not going to fight, I'm not going to fight. And he had started, and he said to Krishna, okay, drive your chariot away. This is speculation, of course, it didn't happen. Somebody could have yelled, oh, you coward, and they could have made fun of him, and he would have become infuriated because of his ego, and he would have turned around and said, all right, straight ahead, kill them all. You see? All right, that was that part. With us, because we have a divine nature, which is ever urging or moving, indeed involving us onward to the point where we now consciously look into all the negativity and say, I can make it go and I will make it go. Negative karmas. Karma can be dissolved. It can be transmuted. So ultimately, the upper hand will win. There are people who they chicken out in the higher life, and that's it for the rest of that life. And it may be for many lives, but even if it's 1,000 lives, ultimately the divine self will say, move on, and it will happen. So it's inevitable. Which is why in real Dharma, in Sanatana Dharma, in Hindu religion, we don't scare anybody and we don't promise anybody and lure them. We don't try to motivate them, because the only motivation that works and succeeds is our own inner motivation. This is so important to understand. So it will happen anyway. So do it the right way. All right. What you do not wish to do through delusion, you shall do against your will. In other words, you realize I have to do it by will. It means the ego, the weak, shilly shally will. Because again, the divinity from within will push us forward. What you do not wish to do through delusion, you shall do against your will, bound by your karma, born of your own nature. Now, how many of us have such positive karma that will impel us unerringly to the goal? Not many. You can get that through the blessing of holy people. This is one of the reasons intelligent people in India visit a lot of saints. I've mentioned that when I would just come into the presence of Swami Shivananda and Anandamaya, or if I was sitting in the place where they were coming and they entered, it wasn't like, oh, great masters, the Shakti, the energy, oh, no. The moment they entered, I became deeply self aware. I met a lot of great yogis. They were holy, they were miracles, and they worked miracles, most of them. But when I was in their presence, I was awed by them. Now, I was awed by Shivananda and Ma. They were of a whole level beyond all the other holy ones I met. But I was awed from the awareness of my own self that they created or produced in me, if you want to say it, or really made possible in me. The light came in brighter, and so I could see better when they came in. And this was something, as I say, truly unique. So it says, the Lord dwells in the hearts of all beings, causing them by his Maya to revolve as if mounted on a machine. In other words, God is there impelling us, not forcing us, but impelling in a sense of putting us in the condition where, if we will, we can do it. And of course, we have to evolve. So we're born, we're born, we die over and over and over. We start out as an atom of hydrogen and we go through more complex things of that, like that. And we come to tiny things and we become bacteria, literally, and tiny super microscopic beings and go on and on, more and more complex until finally we evolve and here we are. And I am talking to you about the Bhagavad Gita, the highest of the philosophies, and you're listening to me because you want to know. It's been a long journey and it's taken creation cycles, not just trillions, more than that of years for us to get here, which is why it's such a crime against ourselves for us to waste that and not then keep moving on, but decide to get sidetracked and go after small minded goals that if we get them, they won't satisfy us. And if we don't get them, then it'll make us miserable. So we're going on the wheel of birth and death, whether you think of it as horizontal or vertical. And that won't stop for us. We may say, no, 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 no more. I think I've told you about the lady I knew that when a friend of mine would read out chapters from her book on reincarnation, would almost cry and say, no, Bess, no, no, please, no. See, she didn't say, I think you're lying. She didn't say, I think you're. not speaking the truth, because she was a very evolved person, and her evolved intuition told her best was writing the truth, but she didn't want it to be. And she'd say, please, please, Beth, one life's enough, one life's enough. But it didn't change anything. So when we don't get with the program, it'll never stop, it'll never stop, it'll never stop. And there is a possibility of people being bound virtually for infinity, but ultimately it won't happen. I mean, ultimately that won't carry on, and we'll go. But we can stay away from God for a long time. In fact, I remember in India, this one man told me that in one scripture told of a man who, though alive, was a yogi in meditation, he was taken to a higher world. And some people actually guided him, and they took him like what was across a great plain, and he came to a heap of bones, a huge heap of bones, a few hundred feet high. Think how many skeletons it would take to make that. It was a gigantic thing. And he said, what is this? Because in the other world, people don't die. And the guide said, these are the bones of the lives in which you sought God. And he thought, well, pretty good. I mean, look at all that. There's thousands of lives there. And then he turned and he looked and he saw another pile that was like, he couldn't see the top. It was like miles high. And he said, what's that? Oh, they said, those are the bones of the lives in which you did not seek God. Then he didn't feel quite so proud. And you see, sad to say, we can switch back and forth between seeking God and not seeking God, being wise and being utterly foolish. So you see, it's a perilous thing. Therefore, the advice is, there was a Pogo character that in one of their comic strips, there was some situation, said, cut the philosophy and run. And that's what we have to do. We can't even be theoretical saying, oh, I believe all these things are true, etc. You have to act like they're true. So we need to run while we have the chance until it does go from us. And it says, like a yantra, it was like a device. They didn't have gas and electrical run things in, but they had machines that you turned them on, they moved, you turned them off, they stopped. And this is how it goes with us. You just can't get away with it. You could ride in a car, and if you were crazy, you could say, I don't like the wheels to move. Make the wheels stop moving. Obviously not. So you don't have any choice about that. You just have a choice as to whether you're going, as I say, get with the program and get wise, and then get out of here. Graduate from our friend Ben Bibb, a great healer, used to talk about the world as this dumb kindergarten. So fly unto him alone. And it says fly, rush, go. Not stand and say, oh, I should go over there. Or just walking along, moseying along, and just a leisurely stroll, stop for a while and look around. No. Don't even run. Leap there. To him alone, because there is no other thing. All the metaphysical study, all the positive thinking, all the affirmations, all the visualizing of white light around you will do nothing. And a lot of yogic nonsense of, up the spine and down the spine and up the spine and down the spine and then, to this level and that level. It's all Maya. It's all Maya. See, some people fiddle with worldly machines and they outgrow that, and then for many lives they fiddle with yoga machines, you might say, with yogic gimmicks. Fake yoga is nothing but gimmicks, and a lot of them, and a lot of complex ones, and they have an effect. You do it and go, you think, wow, but it isn't wow. It's too bad. So fly into Him alone for refuge with your whole being. If your whole being isn't in it, it doesn't work. That's one of the reasons we're vegetarians. It's one of the reasons we follow yama niyama, to completely purify and magnetize, orient our whole Shakti, not just the body of the physical body, but also the astral and causal bodies, to orient them and create such a magnetism that as a magnet attracts iron, so we will be attracted toward the absolute reality, which is our own real nature. And that is the supreme peace, to attain that, and that is the eternal abode. I know there's, oh no, it's perpetual evolution. There's never an end. You just go from world to world, and yes, you go through many lives, and it's on evolution, and that's it. And people who don't want to come to the end, people who don't really much want evolution, they just love that idea. Oh, yes, yes, yes. I'll always be here on the wheel. Well, you get what you want. So, thus has the knowledge that is more secret than all that is secret. In other words, there's a lot that's hidden, like you and I can't see our lungs breathing. A lot of things are too small for us to see. There are things that are far away from us on the other side of the world. We don't see. That's secret in the sense of hidden. And that knowledge is more hidden, more secret than all. And that has been expounded to you by me. This is the highest and the inmost, and therefore the most hidden. Having reflected on this fully, you see, you have to use your head. You have to really understand it. Like, there is reincarnation. Okay, I accept it. No, you have to think about reincarnation, the implications of reincarnation. It isn't a lot of mind gaming and not of abstract philosophizing, but you do have to think about it and reflect about it and think, well, if that principle is true, how do I live it out? If that principle is true, how do I strengthen that in my consciousness? And if that isn't true, how do I weaken its influence and ultimately remove its influence? I mean, that's so it's crucial. Listen, to get to the goal takes all you and I have. Again, I've mentioned Mirabai, but I'll repeat it again. You see, she was a princess, literally. She married a king. She lived in a palace. She was devoted to God from childhood, and the king and his family were just irreligious people. And so they persecuted her and they mocked her. And finally, she just had enough. And one day she just walked out of the palace. And from then on, she wandered all throughout various areas of India. And she wrote beautiful devotional music and sang them. When you hear one of her songs, you know it's hers. They are more wonderful than anything else I have ever heard. So anyway, uh, that's what she did. And she woke up people's spiritual consciousness. Music, shabda, sound is not just nothing. It's not neutral. It has a polarity. It has a charge. And when a great person like her sings, the consciousness can be changed. A friend of mine met Yogananda in the 1920s in California, and sometimes went to his ashram. And he said that on occasion, Yogananda gave Veena concerts. Veena is a stringed instrument of India. And he said it wasn't listening to music. It was beautiful, but it wasn't just music. He said, when I listened, I felt like blocks of space and consciousness were opening outward more and more and more. And I left with my consciousness changed. So this is what Mirabai did. So one of her songs says, I have sold everything in the marketplace of this world. In other words, I gave up everything I had to buy my Kanaya. Kanaya is the name of Krishna. She was a devotee of Krishna. In fact, when she was a little girl, a sadhu came to visit the palace of her parents, and he talked to her a lot about spiritual life. He saw she was precocious, very precocious. She was maybe 5 or 6 years old, but he really talked to her about it, and he had the image of Krishna, which he worshiped daily. Well, when he was leaving, she said, you can leave, but you leave Krishna with me. And she was so adamant, he realized, yes, I should do this. So he left that image there. And then from then on, she worshiped. And of course, she developed an affinity with Krishna. But she was in an environment that held her back, both them and then in her husband's palace. So she just left it all behind. Just imagine all that, a royalty. My friend, the Maharani of Jind, as a 5-year-old girl, had 8 servants. Can you imagine that? That's how she lived. So Mira got rid of it all, and then everybody said she's crazy, and her family denounced her, and people mocked her. And she says, I have sold everything in the marketplace of this world to buy my Kanaya. People laugh at me, and they say it was too high a price. Others laugh at me and say it wasn't a sufficient price. It was too low a price. But all Mira knows is that it was everything I had. That's the way it works in spiritual life. I hope people hear that and say, oh, does it mean I have to do this? I'd have to do that, give up this, give up that? Well, not necessarily, but the very fact that that popped into your mind, your subconscious mind may be telling you you should give that up. I don't say so, but ponder it. So, fly into him alone for refuge with your whole being. You have to feel it's life and death, and it is. See, a refuge, like we have refugees, they're running away from something that could have killed them. By that grace, you see, we say, I need God's grace. I need God's grace. There were the people that they weren't really quite on the beam, and they had done incorrect things, nothing criminal, of course. And they were living there in the ashram with Yogananda. And they said, please, won't you give us your grace to be able to straighten up? He said, you already have my grace and you already have God's grace. The thing that lacks is your grace. We have to remember that too. A lot of people say, well, God didn't make it easy for me, or God didn't clear the way. And I prayed to know what to do, and God didn't tell me what to do. It's because you either already knew, or the finding it out on your own would open up to you opportunities you didn't realize you had. It's like exercise. The more you exercise, the stronger you get. So, anyway, by that grace you shall attain supreme peace and the eternal abode. Thus has the knowledge that is more secret than all that is secret, been expounded to you by me. Now, what's coming next? Not what we don't find, but we certainly don't find outside the Bhagavad Gita. All of this, 18 chapters, all these verses, hundreds of verses, about 650 or more, because there's 700 total. And we've got about maybe not 20 left. Okay? I want to read it again. Thus has the knowledge that is more secret than all that is secret been expounded to you by me. Having reflected on his fully, act in the way you wish. Dangerous. Dangerous. Without free will, you don't make it. So even Krishna says to Arjuna, you reflect on it, and then, but reflect fully, completely. That's important. Then act in the way you want. We're not motivated by God, by any great teaching, not by the Gita, but by this. And what does this want? This is unique in all scriptures. It doesn't say this is the truth, so you better do it or else. This is the truth, you'll be rewarded by God. No. Anyone have Arjuna wasn't stupid. He knew every word Krishna spoke was true, and yet Krishna still says, but it's all up to you, Arjuna. And do what you really want to do. There are people who say, oh, well, all right, of course, I'll go meditate. If something in you, all right, someone asked a great teacher, I've heard it stated that this so involved Jesus. I personally don't believe that. But this a disciple asked his guru, when am I going to get somewhere? When am I going to know God? So the guru said, come with me. And he took him out, and they walked together in a river, and the guru shoved him under and held him under. And he fought, and he fought, and he fought, and he fought, and he fought. And finally, the guru laid him up, and he came up, and the guru didn't even wait for him to settle down. He said, what did you think when you were there in the water, down deep in the water, because they're still there standing? He said, oh, I knew I'd die if I couldn't get up and in the air. And the guru said, when you want it that much, then you'll have enlightenment. It's not for weak people. It's not for mediocrities. And I've had people say to me, well, if it takes all that, I don't want to bother. And that's right. Don't. And the Bible says it's better to not vow than to vow and not fulfill the vow. Okay. Here again. Oh, no. Of course, once again, I've gone over your time. The Gita shouldn't be so wonderful. It's all Krishna's fault. It's all the marvelous truths of the Gita. So we will need to conclude this and then go on. I hope you want to hear more. I want to talk more about it. Therefore, namaste, namaste.